Hi, my name is Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you 15 recommendations to read for spooky season. So these are in no particular order, just the order they occurred to me. The first one is a book I read recently, Bored Gay Werewolf by Tony Santorella. This was so much fun. It is about Brian, who sort of works in a cafe. He's got a group of friends, but he feels like life is a little bit dull. And he has a secret, which is that he occasionally turns into a werewolf. So he tries to hide this secret from his friends. It's a lot of fun, and it's a book with a lot of heart as well, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Next recommendation is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This is my favourite of Paul Tremblay's that I have read so far. This is about a married couple who go with their 7-year-old daughter Wen to stay in a remote cabin on a quiet New Hampshire lake, and one day this stranger arrives and starts talking to Wen out in the yard and says that she has to let him into their home, and he has this ultimatum basically for the family, which is going to have potentially wide-ranging implications. I really liked it. I found it really sort of thrilling and pacey. I like the themes that it looked at, and it is also queer as well. Next is Foe by Iain Reid. Let's hold the book the right way up. I would actually recommend any of Iain Reid's novels. I've read all 3 of his published novels, so Foe, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and We Spread, and I've given all 3 books 5 stars. I don't think there's another author who's had 100% 5-star hit rate from me, so that is high praise indeed. In Foe, we are following a couple who live on a remote isolated farm, and one day a stranger arrives. I mean, it's kind of sounding similar to this, but they're very different books. A stranger arrives and says that the guy whose name, Junior, has been selected to go on this really important mission that will involve him travelling far away from his home. And then it's really about what happens as a result of that and the impact that has on Henrietta, who is the wife. What I think Iain Reid does really well is sort of that quiet, unsettling dread that sort of builds up slowly in his novels. So yeah, that was really excellent. Next is Dead Relatives by Lucie McKnight Hardy. This is a short story collection. This is gothic and creepy and kind of a bit weird. The titular short story follows a young girl called Iris who lives in a big house in the country with her mother and servants, and we are building up to this event when a group of people called the Ladies is going to arrive. It's gothic, it's ghostly, and it's creepy. Next is another short story collection, Night Side of the River by Jeanette Winterson. This is a ghost story collection. A number of the stories focus on AI and sort of what AI looks like within the context of a ghost story. Some of the stories are definitely in the sort of creepy horror category. Some of them have a twist in the tale. Some of them, while they are ghostly, they are more moving. There's a couple of interconnected stories in there which I thought were incredibly impactful. It's a really strong, well-written collection that looks at lots of interesting themes, and the stories are interspersed with sort of non-fiction, small bits from Jeanette Winterson's life and background, which was really interesting. Next is Rouge by Mona Awad. So Mona Awad is probably best known for the novel Bunny, which I did enjoy, but I much preferred Rouge. Rouge is a book that I want to reread, and I think if I reread it I would give it 5 stars. So Rouge follows this woman who is kind of obsessed with skincare, beauty type products, as was her mother, and her mother has recently passed away. And her mother was a member of this sort of exclusive, mysterious spa, and our protagonist sort of is suspicious of this spa and what is going on and the implications they may have had in her mother's death, and so she starts to look into this. I really, really like this story. It is a bit weird, creepy, and it goes some places that I wasn't expecting, but I really, really loved. Next is Whisper, by Chang. This is a Taiwanese horror novel translated by Roddy Flagg. So this is about a taxi driver who starts investigating these stories of people who hear strange whispering voices and then they all die a gruesome death. He becomes sort of involved in this because of the death of his wife. It touches on some sort of folklore type things and cultural aspects, and it's a really sort of creepy horror novel that I would definitely recommend. Next is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey, and I do think this novel is one which is a little bit divisive. I know some readers really disliked the direction this novel takes, but I really loved it. So in Just Like Home, we have a woman who's going back to her family home. Her father was a serial killer, he was a convicted serial killer. She goes back to the family home and these notes start mysteriously appearing around the house, seemingly written by her father, although that seems impossible. And yeah, weird stuff starts happening. I loved the direction this book went in. It may not be for everyone, but I really, really liked it. Next is a book that I honestly think about so often, and it's Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. I feel like that's a book that I gave it 3 stars, which means I liked it, but honestly, the amount of times I think about that book. So Ghost Wall is about a young girl who, along with her family, they are sort of living as if they were in the Iron Age, and for like sort of like research purposes, I think the father's his profession is something to do with that anyway. So they're living as if they live in the Iron Age, and this one sort of goes in some maybe unexpected directions. It's very, very short, it's very impactful, and it's pretty disturbing, but really, really excellent, and one that has absolutely stayed with me since I read it a few years ago. Next is, we've got some Shirley Jackson. This is Hangsaman, which is one I feel like you don't hear that much about. I think it's Shirley Jackson's second novel, and it follows a girl who is 17 years old called Natalie, and she lives with her family. Her parents are quite sort of constraining on her life, and then she moves away to college, and then weird stuff starts happening around the dormitory among this group of girls. So it's sort of part coming of age, it's gothic, it's creepy, and it's weird. Next is The Taking of Annie Thorne by C.J. Tudor. So I would honestly recommend anything by C.J. Tudor, because I think I've read everything that they have published and really enjoyed all of them. But this one is the one that I own, and also I did give this one 5 stars. So this is about so a young girl called Annie who disappears, and then like 2 days later she turns back up again at home, but she doesn't say anything about what's happened to her, where she's been, what's going on, but she's back and she's seemingly okay. But she doesn't seem quite right. Like, she seems like something's a little bit off, and we go from there. I think C.J. Tudor writes really great sort of pacey, thrilling horror stories, and I would definitely recommend honestly any of their books. The next is a book that I honestly don't think I've heard anyone else ever mention, and it's Resin by Anya Riel, and it was translated from Danish by Charlotte Barslund. So I read this several years ago and I would really like to reread it. I believe this novel won and or was nominated for several awards in Denmark and Scandinavia. And this is a quite disturbing, creepy book. So it's about a girl called Liv who, to common knowledge, she died when she was 6 years old, except she didn't actually die. Her father has led everyone else to believe that she died, but he's actually keeping her at home because he feels like by doing that he can protect her from like the outside world. And the book is told from this 6-year-old's perspective. It is it's weird, it's quite disturbing, but really, really impactful, and it's a book that I would definitely like to reread in future. So that's maybe a bit of a hidden gem. If you've not heard of Resin before, I would recommend that one. Next, The Fog by James Herbert. So this is a book that was first published in 1975. I've only read a couple of James Herbert's. This is my favourite so far. And it's set in this sort of small town where one day this big like opening in the ground appears, and out of it comes this fog. And this fog causes people to do bizarre and murderous things. It's a wild ride, this book. One thing I do think James Herbert is very good at, based on 2 of his books I've read, this one and The Rats, is he can do a great horror set piece. So there's a scene in this in a school gymnasium, which is a lot, but he just does a great horror set piece that's just so, the images are so stark and gruesome and disturbing, and as you're reading it you're just like, what am I reading, what is going on? But honestly, it was a lot of fun. Next is Comfort Me With Apples by Catherynne and Valente. This is a very short little book that I thoroughly enjoyed. This is about a woman called, what is her name, Sophia, who lives with her perfect husband in her perfect home in this sort of perfect town. But she starts to feel like maybe something's a bit off. She starts to feel like maybe her husband isn't telling her everything. There is a locked basement in their home that she's not allowed to enter. That's always a good sign. And she also feels like the neighbours are maybe keeping something from her as well. I really, really like this book. I did not guess where this was going. And I thought it was excellent. And then the final book I want to recommend is one that I read recently, which is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This was my first Grady Hendrix, and I thought it was excellent. This is about a woman who whose parents have died. I forget if it's like the mother or the father. And then they have to, her and her brother have to clear out the old familial home and sell the property in order to sort of obtain their inheritance. And their mother was a puppeteer. So in the home there are lots of puppets and dolls. So you might be able to tell what's going to happen next. And those dolls are pretty creepy. I thought this book was really, really creepy. It took a little bit to get going, but once it got going, I thought it was excellent. I found it scary at points. I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, but and it was pacey, and I really enjoyed sort of the final sort of third of the book where we really get the action happening and we are discovering different things. I thought it was great, and I'm looking forward to reading more Grady Hendrix. So those, I think that was 15 recommendations for spooky season. I did do one of these videos I think a couple of years ago, so I'll link that down below because I don't think there are any repetitions in this one. So let me know what you're going to be reading for spooky season, and if you have any good recommendations for me. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.